fact that you have had the Minds project, which is actually a way of testing in another city the basic ideas of the Peterborough study in Cambridge. But you've also been involved in other longitudinal studies, and I don't think many people know that longitudinal studies have a long tradition in Sweden.
Yes. Because of our personal security numbers, I guess, it's very easy to study people from official records in Sweden, and that was the dominating kind of longitudinal studies. I mean, the official records-based study, and I did my PhD on one of these, and it used to be called the Project Metropolitan. And it was a longitudinal study of 15,000 people born in 1953 and living in Stockholm.
But this is quite exceptional. I mean, if you look at, for example, Belgium, it's extremely difficult to get high quality data. It seems that, some countries have a long tradition in gathering data.
Yes.
Which allow for panel studies, and I think both Sweden and Norway are exceptional in terms of their capacity of collecting data.
Yes, but that's why, because we have these records or registers of high quality.
In Belgium, there is this kind of discussion going on. People start realizing it's necessary, but it has long time been ignored because of the ideas of privacy and how to connect data from different sources. I think in many countries where data collection started later, there was this dominant influence of critical criminology, or at least some kinds of critical criminology. I don't want to generalize, but there was the kind of 70s Marxist idea that it's not important to do this longitudinal study, it's important to study the social system, while you can, of course, also study the social system using all kinds of data. But I mean, that was the culture of the 1970s was probably different than in Sweden, or not?
I'm not sure. I mean, even in the 1980s, you could hear that the longitudinal studies was of no importance, and it was the social systems that was the real thing, so to speak. But I think many people who had that opinion then, they have changed, and they are into the longitudinal studies now.
And what made them
realize in Stockholm? Yeah. Okay.
What made them realize that it was also important that they saw the light, or?
I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. Good data.
I think that's very important. I mean, without good data, you cannot properly test theories, of course.
No, and that's why we, in a way, have left the old longitudinal studies and started, for example, Minds, which is based. I mean, the purpose is to test theory. And
I have a question about that. By the way, it was in 2008 that I went to Stockholm to this conference of librarians. Yeah, I don't know how is the network working, but they are still active, but they have less resources to meet. But talking about these longitudinal studies, perhaps the reason why they are not well known outside of Sweden is probably because the results were published in Swedish only.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What changed? Yeah, tell me. Yeah, go. Please.
No, but I remember my old advisor, Carl Gunnar Jansson, who was the PI for the Project Metropolitan. His policy was to first present the results in Swedish or in reports, in the report series. And after that, you could write manuscript for journals. And I don't think that was a good policy.
Not at all.
No.
I agree.
We had the same policy, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's very difficult for scholars in Europe to recreate the history of different schools of thought, because everybody was writing in their own native language, and as you know, it's quite difficult. And quite different in Europe compared to the USA, where everybody just.
But we didn't write it in Swedish, but we wrote it as reports published in Sweden, and that was, they were not distributed outside Sweden.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
But don't you think that there is a place for a couple of PhDs in history or a project to recover that? Because when you write down the history of Europe, everybody talks about the Cambridge study for delinquency development, a model. Yeah, okay, perfect. But there were other things going on, and nobody knows about that, and nobody writes about that or shows something. Because in other countries, like for example Switzerland, they are now elaborating the statistics on recidivism based on cohorts. They are taking, because it's very difficult in Switzerland because of the high percentage of foreign population. You cannot measure recidivism if the person is no longer in the country. So they are taking the persons born. And we are probably going to repeat some of the mistakes that the first researchers did, and we could be learning how do you use these official records, which were the things that were interested to discuss. I think there is a hole there, and especially for someone who wants to write his PhD on the history of Swedish criminology, is very bad known outside Sweden. And the Nordic Research Council played a major role in the development of criminology in Europe. Nobody knows about that.
Yeah. There is a good publication. I think it's translated to English on the Project Metropolitan. Nowadays it's called the Stockholm Birth Cohort. And the title is Born in 1953, or Born 1953. And it's a more popular science, but it's a very good presentation of the Project Metropolitan and in the context of Sweden at the time when the cohort was raised. It's very, very interesting. It's written by Sten-Åke Stenberg, who's professor of sociology at Stockholm University.
Yeah, I see Sten-Åke Stenberg, yeah?
Yeah.
Exactly. Published in 2018.
Yes.
Also in open access in European networks. But you see, it has 14 quotations while it's new. This sounds extremely interesting. Perhaps there is a need for an article that summarizes this.
Okay. It's not only about criminology. I mean, it's broader than.
Yeah, this is a Project Metropolitan. Yeah, it's very interesting, this. But I don't remember seeing a presentation at the ESC about this. Yeah, I understand that it's more general, but
it's more general sociologist. But there are people in Stockholm at the Department of Criminology that they are working with data from the Project Metropolitan, like Anders Nilsson, and I don't remember their names. Fredrik Sivertsson, if you've heard of him, they are working with this data and doing follow-ups. I think you can follow them up to age 60.
Okay.
At least partly.
Yeah, because I can imagine that there is a lot of attrition. I mean, if you can already follow up people for such a long time.
Yes, and they are 15,000, and half is girls or females. But it's not only boys.
Exactly, which is the main limitation of many of these first studies.
Mm.
I was wondering, the other thing is this change towards publishing more in English. It has to do maybe with the European Union, with the more integration of Europe, with the fact that crimes are becoming, there are no more any borders, because you have seen this change, you live this change from when you started criminology and now. Which would be the main difference?
You mean in publishing, or?
Yeah, I would say, let's say start by, and also in crime, in general.
In crime, or in?
Yeah, let's talk about crime. It's better. Let's talk about crime. Forget publishing, because publishing we may discuss. But how did crime change in your lifetime?
Oh.
In Sweden,
In Sweden, yeah, during my lifetime, it has been more violent, of course.
Yeah. So you have the perception that there is more violence, because this is the main question. When you look also at the 60s and the 70s, I mean, the gangs of bikers, one has the impression that it was not completely a paradise, that there was something violent going on. And so the question is the society that is more sensitive? But you have this perception that is more violent. Okay, that's interesting.
I think there's a small group that is more violent. That group, I mean, it's an identical group, but it has been more it has been more violent.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
perhaps.
It seems that property crime was very important when you were studying in the 70s or 80s, and now it is no longer, and maybe it reflects it, or it seems to reflect a real change in society. There is also the virtual world that arrived. I mean, it's an interesting time of changes for and challenges for criminology, I think. And several of the persons that we discussed with talk about this change from, let's say, from property more to violence, but it's not clear whether it reflects a real change or a change in their social reaction to crime.
Was that a question?
Yes, I'm just trying to make you talk.
Okay.
I was just trying to push you to take a position there.
I think that's a different question to answer, just about the change of crime. No, I'm very quiet now. I know that.
No, that's not the problem. This is just that.
Just cut it.
Yeah, we will cut this. Don't worry. But no, it's this change.
No, but I'm trying to think about it, how it was 40 years ago. I must think, how old was I 40 years ago? I was young. And what kind of crimes did we? But perhaps it's like you said, that we were more worried about, if I talk about worry about crime, more worried about property crimes, and as a woman, perhaps about, rapes.
Yeah.
But like that. Not so. I don't think we discussed violence so much as we do today, and also, violent crimes against women. I mean, that discussion rised during the 70s in Sweden.
Yeah.
Especially regarding rapes.
Yeah. But you had your number of robberies. I mean, we even call it the Stockholm syndrome.
Aha, you mean the bank robberies?
Yeah, the bank robberies.
I already forgot the bank robberies. Yes, that's true. Yeah, that was yeah. They are gone. You don't have any bank because the banks have no money. So.
Exactly. So I just read in the newspaper that it doesn't happen anymore in Belgium. So maybe it will happen again. But I mean, banks have no money anymore. So yeah, changing circumstances.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think
and, I mean, violent crimes and including robberies among between young people. I mean, that's that it's not a new problem, but it has been rising in Sweden the last years, or the 2 or 3 last years. And I'm not sure we heard about that kind of crimes 40 years ago.
Yeah, 40 years ago, the image of Sweden was mainly, I would say, ABBA. We had the impression, I mean, my impression of Sweden is cool people dressed in, at least the young generations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then when I read about it, I saw, yeah, there were also, of course, as everywhere else, some problems, but
nobody locked the door. You could take the key from. Yeah.
Yeah, there are some changes in society which are not easy to understand when everything seems to be improving, or could have been improving. It clearly has not. Something at one moment something went wrong, and it's not easy to find the reason. Maybe this interest in criminology is also a reflection of that. Or maybe we talk too much about crime. I don't know.
Maybe.
But I think that if I think about some of our students, I think that their interest in criminology also comes from movies, from television, from the CSI series, and from all that stuff.
Okay.
And I mean, many of the students, they don't really understand that this is supposed to be a science.
Yeah.
I think it's something else for them. So I only give a lecture on the first course when they comes to us, and I try to start with this discussion. I mean, what is criminology? Is it what you see when you look at TV, on movies and that stuff, or is it science? And I try to tell them what differs science from the other world.
Yeah,
if you want to stop, go. You can stop now. That's what.
Yeah, but
I mean, some of them does.
Yeah, we have the same phenomenon that
exactly.
after a couple of months they realize that they are not going to do criminal profiling or something like that.
Yeah,
and
that's
they abandon.
Yeah.
This changed a little bit with the pandemic and the recording of the classes, because some of these students thought, okay, I will hear the classes later. And so we had less people dropping out in 2022, for example. Now in 2021, 22, then more bad results at the exams. That's what we saw. But there is some confusion. Also, yeah, also in the places where they also teach criminalistics or forensic sciences, like in our university, there is even more confusion about this. Okay, so I think we saw. Are we missing something from the questions that we have? Because I went to different questions a little bit.
I don't even remember your questions.
I made sure that we discussed all the key subjects we highlighted on our
Maybe there is one thing, Lieven, that is, which are the challenges now for criminology? You have all these programs. Which is the future for criminology in Sweden?
Yeah, that's the only one. Although we started the discussion, but that's maybe something that we could elaborate on. Challenges are so different in different countries, different problems, different phenomena. What do you think about
I think
the case of Sweden?
there are many challenges, I think, for Sweden. But if we talk about the educational programs, I mean,
let's start with this.
Start with that, or
the education.
I mentioned that before. I mean, you need high quality teachers, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I can't say that we haven't, but we have too few of them.
Okay.
And I think we also it would be Sweden would benefit from to recruit teachers from other countries, as to create networks, international networks.
Okay.
Even for the educational part, I think that would be a very good idea. And we have our master program is an international program.
Mm-hmm.
So we have students from all over the world.
Also from Belgium, because I know we have the Erasmus program.
Yes, also from Belgium, and I guess also from I'm not sure about Switzerland, but
I'm not sure we send people to Sweden. But this probably because we still do not have an agreement. That we have to check this, because if you teach in English, then it's much easier. There is this limitation with the language, also for the people who come
in
to
English.
Yeah,
on the master level.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And we are trying to at least give one course or perhaps two in English for the undergraduate level, but we are not there. But we are doing some. They are having some lectures in English.
Yeah, we are doing this as well. Just a couple of courses so that they get used to it.
Exactly.
I don't have the feeling that it works perfectly at the undergraduate level. It's very important at the master level, but
why not? But I mean, if you have the opportunity to recruit teachers from other countries, you must teach in English.
Yeah, but in some countries it's not so easy to teach in a language that is not the language of the country for the basic education.
Perhaps.
For example, at the bachelor level, we must assure that the person can pass the exam in French, for example. So we should give the person the possibility to pass the exam in her or his own language. It's different at the master level, but this is also a big change, because I remember in the 1990s, nobody would have ever thought of teaching at the beginning of the 1990s of teaching in another language in the same country, or maybe for a conference, but not a regular course. And quietly, it's happening in a lot of places. That is also a huge change. I think in the Netherlands also the master programs are in English.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So this is also a change. It's interesting to see that. At the same time, you see a fragmentation of Europe in other aspects, but they are. I always think that the Erasmus was the best invention of the European Union to put people together. So at least in education, it worked. At the political level, of course, we could discuss.
Okay. But the other challenge, I think, that's the research part. I mean, I have a dog here. So, I mean, as I think I said from the start, that we need, at least at our department, we are, and at least some of us are very interested in research about the causes and causal and mechanisms. And I think that kind of research is lacking in Sweden.
Thank you for following Lieven and Marcelo's Criminology podcast, a podcast hosted by Marcelo Aebi from the University of Lausanne, Switzerland, and Lieven Pauwels from Ghent University, Belgium. We aim to draw a map of the state of criminology across Europe through the words of contemporary criminologists. How is criminology defined and taught? Which are the main lines of research? Which are the main schools of thought in each country? These and many other questions are answered here by fellow researchers who share their vision on the development of criminology in their countries from its beginnings to the second decade of the 21st century. If you want to know and compare their stories, stay tuned. This podcast is edited by Eduardo Coco from the University of Lausanne. Our theme song is Seagull's Night, Noche de Gaviotas, composed by Gustavo Cantero, arranged by Tato Germano, and played by Tato and Gustavo with the voices of Sasha Conte and Alejandro Turco Guyot. Cheers, and see you soon.